What's up, everyone? Casey from the Roadway here. And I just wanted to take a minute. I know everyone's sick of talking about the COVID deal. I know you don't want to hear about it, but I've got a few hours. I'm driving up to Ozark, Arkansas to participate in the basic sniper operators course. Not to digress, but that's a course that we started a few years ago, and another agency has taken it over. So I'm just headed up that way to kind of, visit and help out as much as I can with those guys. So while I'm on the road for the next few hours, I had some time, and I really just wanted to talk to you guys about something I was thinking about last night. And I mentioned some of this on a podcast before, so I just kind of wanted to go over what I think is the reasoning why we're taking COVID so seriously. I know, including myself, I often said, look, it's not killing as many people as a flu. It's basically a bad flu year. What's the difference? And I'm not justifying anyone's liberties or rights or anything like that. I'm strongly against anyone attempting to, reduce or whatever they call it, temporarily restrict rights or liberties. I'm not for that at all. This isn't that. I'm just wanting to explain to you why I suspect we are treating this so much differently than we're treating anything else. So, and guys, my science is not solid. So if I make a mistake, feel free to correct me. All right, that's my disclaimer. But as I understand it, the biggest difference with COVID versus like the flu is that with the flu, you're mostly or only, correct me which one that is, symptomatic when you are, infectious when you're symptomatic, which means when you start running a fever, then you are, infectious. And that's why I guess it's always been said that, hey, make sure you haven't ran a fever for so-and-so time before you go back to work, 24 hours or 48 hours. So again, my understanding is that you're mostly infectious when you are actually symptomatic. And why everyone keeps bringing up asymptomatic with COVID is because you are infectious when you're not symptomatic. Now that's an important thing, because that means you're spreading it to people who may become symptomatic, and it may, make them really sick, but there's no way for them to know that you have it because you're not sick. So typically, I guess what I'm saying is, if I went and I had the flu, you go to work and someone says, oh man, you like crap, you're running a fever, yeah, go home, all right, and that's it. But if you're asymptomatic and you're still infectious, then you work or whatever, you're still spreading it, but no one knows that you're not sick. So that means, hey, you continue to spread it around the office or wherever you're at without even knowing that you're doing it, without you being sick at all. Now, why is that? We know this, right? I mean, they've been saying this the whole time. So what is the big deal with that? I just want to take a second and think about this for a second. There's a Newsweek article that came out a week or two ago where they're even saying that it's more than likely that they believe that this thing came from the lab. I believe it came from the lab. I'm not saying that it was manipulated in the lab. I'm not saying that it was created in the lab. But it could have been manipulated, or it could have been studied. Like I said before, viruses are only in labs for two reasons. That is, to help people or to hurt people. And this is just the way things are. We use viruses for either medicine or biological weapons. And a lot of times they're going to be studied and developed for both. Because if I'm creating a weapon and I need to create a vaccine, or I need to create a cure, yada, 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 etc. So what is the perfect biological weapon? Ideally, what you would want with a biological weapon is you would want something that is developed, that can be carried without people knowing it. It doesn't make people sick, so it can get to the area that you want it to get to. It can spread, and then hopefully spread without people realizing it as much as possible. Possibly look like other diseases or other illnesses, so that doctors are not, are basically fooled by it, that would be the one thing. So one phase would be it would spread effectively and efficiently without being interrupted by medicine as long as possible. The second thing would be, and this may sound like science fiction, but the second thing would be it would have a trigger point, in which case it went from being not very deadly to extremely deadly. In other words, it just started killing people. Everybody seemed like it wasn't such a big deal. Maybe people didn't realize they had it, but all of a sudden everyone starts dying. And then at some point, the third phase would be that it died out. Because what you don't want with a biological weapon is you don't want it to continue on, kill everybody on the planet, kill the host or the creator of it, kill, in their country. You don't want the person who created a virus doesn't want to be victims of it. So the three phases would be, number one, it would be easy to carry without many symptoms. Most people wouldn't know it. Number two, it would have some type of trigger point, some type of something to where it went almost from like a sleeper cell, and it became extremely deadly or extremely dangerous. And then, in some way or another, it all just started dying out. Okay, does that make sense? It all just started dying out. So that's the three things. Now, if a lab was developing this type of virus, this is just my guess. You wouldn't want to try. You're going to test some things out. You're going to make some trial versions of it, right? Well, you're not going to start with a deadly virus. You don't want to the first thing you've got to do is you've got to create a virus that will be infectious when people are asymptomatic. When people are not symptomatic, you want it to be infectious. You want it to spread like wildfire, okay, and see if you can do that and how effective that is. But you don't want to do that with something really deadly. You don't want to do that with something like, the plague or something extremely deadly. You would want to do that with something closer to maybe the cold or flu. That's what you would want to do. Because that way, if it accidentally gets out or someone gets infected with it, it's dangerous, but there's not, a healthy person probably wouldn't die from it. That's what you would do it, but you would do it on that type of virus, okay? So I would pull, a cold or a flu or a coronavirus, and I would see if I could develop one that would carry and transfer the way I wanted it to. And once I developed that portion of it, that would be stage one, and that's all I would do with that one. And then, once I got that down, I shelved it, or, I had it documented, how it was made and everything was solid on that. Then the next thing I would want to do is I would want to develop one that was highly deadly, but maybe it would be like a sleeper cell. From the first stage that I've been able to accomplish, I would want something to transition to the second stage, which means all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it would just start killing people. But it would have a very short life. And not just its life, but at some point it would stop replicating. It would stop producing. It would just, at some point, it almost like it was on a clock. At some point, everything would just die out. Like, in the movies when you have the robots and they're all connected to a central brain, and when you take that out, everything else just dies. At some point, something to that effect would happen. And maybe that's a bad, metaphor, or maybe that's impossible. But in some manner or another, it would have a time limit, and it would start dying. And that may be related to the season. It may be related to a number of things. It may just be DNA manipulation, where they could just, I don't know, just whatever. But that would be the idea. Again, that would be dangerous because you would have to, you would want to do that, and you actually have to create a virus that was extremely deadly. So that would be highly controlled, and I'm sure that once that was done, once they created something like that, they would destroy it. They know how to do it, but they're probably not going to keep one of those there unless it's under a lot of security. Not something like that, not likely to be in a situation where it would just wander outside, or someone would accidentally get infected with it and take it outside the lab. That would be very highly controlled. And then, of course, the third phase would be creating a virus that would the third phase would be creating a stage that it would just die. And again, that would be something that you may not need a deadly virus for. You can just play around with it. But in the end, you would have, again, just to reiterate, and I know I'm talking a lot, in the end, you would have three stages in this weapon. Infectious, highly infectious, without many symptoms, so that it would spread to the most amount of people in that area. And then some type of trigger where it would become from almost, the flu, or not people weren't sick much at all, to extremely deadly, to almost killing everybody it came in contact with, or everyone that was infected, or making everyone was infected very sick, or killing them. And then the third part would be some type of limit to where it would just die, quit. I say all that to say this: the coronavirus seems to me like maybe it was a simple virus that wasn't extremely deadly, but it may have been manipulated to be highly infectious, more so than normal. Something about the coronavirus is different than the coronaviruses that are out there. Either the fact that it can that it can jump from animal to person, or the fact that it has that it is infectious even when people are asymptomatic. But I wonder if it's not if it wasn't the initial or first stages of creating a weapon, manipulating a virus that wasn't that dangerous to try to achieve a certain goal that could be applied to a weaponized virus that was very dangerous. Anyway, if we knew that would be top secret stuff. We wouldn't be telling people. The world wouldn't be telling people. China would deny it. We would have to take extreme measures to stop it, just in case it was the weaponized version, just in case it was the Pandora's box. But we would have to, at the very least, we would have to start developing procedures like social distancing and things to save us in case that the deadly version, or the deadly virus that had breached that ability, or that had been developed for that purpose, we would have to have procedures in place to deal with that. So I think that this is all a reactionary deal because we were afraid it was weaponized. We're discovering that it may have been manipulated to a stage of weaponization, but it's not a weapon. This is not a weapon. Therefore, we're still treating it like it might be a weapon, just in case, and also to get procedures down in case the next time it is a weapon. So those are just my thoughts. I don't know. That's just me, top of my head. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. I would love to hear people's opinion on that, and tell me what you think. That's all. Later, guys. Stay rogue.